For nearly 50 years, Biotics Research has been a trusted leader in the nutritional supplement industry. Known for uncompromising quality and innovative delivery systems, the company continues to advance the field through ongoing research, unique formulations, and rigorous quality control. Family-owned with a rich history, Biotics Research is most proud of the strong partnerships it has built with the healthcare professionals. On Adjusted Reality, we talk about living strong, vibrant, and healthy. And that starts with the environment around us, whether it's practice or at home. Force of Nature Pro makes it easy to protect your whole being and those you serve with an EPA-registered hospital-grade disinfectant that's powerful against germs, yet free from harsh toxic chemicals. It's safe on hands, treatment tables, and everyday surfaces while supporting better indoor air quality. Plus, it reduces single-use plastics and costs up to 80% less than many traditional products. If you're ready to align your life, your practice, your family routine with a cleaner, more sustainable future, go to forceofnatureclean.com for home and forceofnaturepro.com for exclusive business pricing and limited time offers. Healthy space, healthy practice, healthy life with Force of Nature Pro. Welcome to Adjusted Reality, a podcast series trusted by the adjusted and brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, influencers, and healthcare professionals about how to optimize health in a fun, relatable way. Join me, Dr. Sherry McAllister, as we welcome neurosurgeon Dr. Patrick Roth. Dr. Roth is a board-certified neurosurgeon with over 30 years of experience. Dr. Roth is the chairman of neurosurgery at Hackensack University Medical Center and the founding chair at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. He is an advocate for minimally invasive and non-surgical approaches to back pain, blending the cutting-edge science with the deep holistic view of healing. Now, as a teacher, a mentor, an author, and leader, Dr. Roth brings a wealth of insight into how we can shift from treating disease to truly promoting health. He is the author of 4 books, but the one we're going to talk about today is The End of Back Pain. But there's also a really good, interesting one that I just finished reading as well, which is called The Me in Medicine. And this is the exciting part when you have someone who is as talented, they can write 4 books. You got to hyper focus. So we're going to get him back. That's what I asked it before we even started this podcast. And he may come back depending on how good I am to him in this podcast. So let's get started. Welcome today, Dr. Roth. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the kind words, and I'm delighted to be here.
What's exciting is from a neurosurgeon's perspective, like when I was reading one part of it where you had to see through the eyes of a computer working on a brain, you're literally and figuratively, you've touched and figuratively really moved the brain in so many ways as we get into the healing aspect of back pain. But first, I want to jump in because I always get enthralled on what brought people to where they are today, AKA the pivot. And how did this transpire in the journey? So how did you get to where you are? Really talking about the end of back pain, perhaps maybe even start at youth because, you know, the reality is I understand you were a football player, so that can also be kind of an interesting spot to talk about. But how did it shape your personal life? And then tell us how you ended up in neurosurgery.
Wow. Well, I ended up in neurosurgery. That's pretty easy. I went into medical school actually thinking I'd be a neurologist. My father, who was kind of my idol in life, he was a neurologist, and he was my idol because he loved his job. He was an entrepreneur, a thinker, diagnostician, and had his own business. And so I looked at that and thought, wow, what a great job. But when I went into medical school and did my neurology clerkship, I realized immediately it wasn't actionable enough for me. And when I did my surgery clerkship, I realized, boy, I think a lot like a surgeon in many ways. And so I kind of put the two together. I remember calling my dad saying, you know, something, I don't think I'm going to be a neurologist. I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. And he said, great idea. He goes, if I could do it all again, that's what I would have done. And so that's all I needed to hear. I didn't think very much about it, except I loved the neuroscience and I was a surgical thinker.
It's so beautiful, especially having a father, the figure that you really idolized, that you saw as successful, and you got to see something so beautiful, which is someone enjoying their job. Because at the end of the day, it's the passion that drives us, and it's what changes how we do things every day, who we touch and how we touch them. That passion is really transferred to whoever you're going to be working with. And today it's you. So I'm transferring as much energy and passion into this as we can. But tell me something. If your dad had said, you know, I think you should just be a neurologist, would that have changed things for you?
He would never have said that because that wasn't the way he was. But
See, it starts
I
from the
don't
very
think,
beginnings.
yeah, I think once I get a bee in my bonnet, I pretty much head that way almost regardless of what I hear. And one interesting comment about passion, because it's always been something of interest to me, and that is that we give advice to our youngsters nowadays constantly: follow your passion, follow your passion. And what a career in neurosurgery has made me believe is that's terrible advice.
Okay.
And basically, we shouldn't follow passion. We should create passion, and you create passion through mastery. And neurosurgery was a perfect example of that for me. I went in, I wasn't even sure, I never thought about what surgery would be like. I just thought I liked surgical decision making and I liked neuroscience. But when you enter a residency and you spend 100 hours a week for a long period of time doing something and you get better and better at it, passion's an automatic. It comes. And so today's youth doesn't have to worry about following their passion. They don't even know what their passion is. All they have to do is think about what they're pretty good at and then put a lot of energy into getting good at it, becoming a master of whatever it is.
That is really good adjusted reality right there. You can't get better than that, because when people do say that, oftentimes it can lay flat because they're like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be passionate about it. But you do when you start doing something that you actually start enjoying and become masterful at it. So well done, you. Right out of the gate, you're already adjusting our reality. So let's start with now. We're going into shaping the professional path. This then became one of those things that you mastered because you were seeing a lot of people, and you also saw yourself start to recognize back pain is real, and there's things that are not being told. And that was one of the things that I loved about the first chapter of the book was healthcare is not about health. And that was an interesting statement because we're starting to recognize it more and more in today's world. So tell me why you wrote about back pain, and why was it so important to start talking about the end of back pain, which I think is such a phenomenal title because you really want to be proactive. You want to tell someone what you want them to do. And the end of back pain is exactly where you want someone to end up when they finish your book.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting. So, I mean, one thing of interest is the evolution of the title of the book. The original title of the book was The Hidden Core. And by hidden, I meant metaphorically and physically hidden. That is the part of the core that's behind you. But HarperCollins, who published the book, didn't like that idea. They didn't think it was connected enough with back pain. And so, interestingly enough, when I wrote the book and I thought it was finished, I got an email from HarperCollins. I was literally flying to Europe, and I get this email, and the editor said three things. Number one, we're going to change the name to The End of Back Pain. To which I responded, did you read the book? Because there is no end to back pain. You can make back pain a lot better, but you can't get rid of it. The incidence and prevalence of back pain is fixed for the most part anywhere you look in the world. We can talk about that later. But the second thing was, as you know, because you've read the book, I put a lot of philosophers in there, and the editor said basically get rid of all that philosophy garbage. This is a prescriptive book, and all you're going to do is confuse the reader. And then the third thing he said was, and by the way, you're missing a chapter. And this was really helpful. He said, this is a mind body book, and you need to start the book with a mind body chapter. And so I had a full plane ride to Europe to digest the email. And when I got off the plane, I wrote him an email back and said, I'm not getting rid of the philosophy. In fact, I'll give you back the advance you gave me for the book before I take it out. I'm okay with the name change. That's your business. But I'm going to refer to the hidden core a lot in the book. And you're 100% right. It is a mind body book. And thank you for pointing that out to me. And I'll write that chapter. And I wrote the first chapter in the book in 1 week while I was skiing in France, believe it or not. It sounds very romantic.
It's
But
fantastic. And it is romantic. And
yeah,
the best part is if you would have taken out the philosophy, you would have lost me.
yeah,
That's the beauty of coming into this. In fact, one of the pieces in the book that really actually helped me understand more was the French Enlightenment, because you said you were in France, the French Enlightenment writer Voltaire. The art of medicine consists of amusing the patient while nature cures the disease. So, did you not hit the nail on the head? I mean,
well, that is right out of the chiropractor's book, right? That's what makes chiropractic. In fact, if you look at I remember when I first started reading about chiropractic and osteopathic and allopathic, I realized that the chiropractic mindset resonated with me the most because it's a naturalistic mindset. And it really, I believe that most chiropractors believes in this power of nature. We are designed as humans to heal ourselves. And I think there's so much validity in Voltaire's statement. Um,
it's so beautiful that you're saying it because over the years, as you know, we have been damaged through discrimination. And it's that sticky label that's hard to take off once the science starts catching up and we start to be able to show this. But your philosophy in there, the one piece that really inspired too is it's the Latin term, mens sana in corpore sano. A healthy mind is a healthy body. Mens sana in spina sana, a healthy mind in a healthy spine. I mean, those are beautiful words. Like that really is romantic. Remember, you started this with I went skiing in the in the French Alps, and it sounds romantic, and I was writing a book. But those are romantic words
yeah.
to the soul and how the body relates to healing.
Yeah. And, interestingly enough, one of the things as I came across the mind body, as I contemplated it, I became aware of a discipline in psychology or psychiatry called embodied cognition, which is fascinating to me. And it totally describes a lot of what I was saying in the book, but it could be described in a couple of different ways. For example, everybody knows that when you're happy, you smile. But people tend to underestimate how much happiness comes from smiling, the other way around. That's
Exactly.
the physical creating the emotional. And likewise, one study I found fascinating, they took a bunch of subjects, divided them up into two different rooms. And in one room, they had the subjects brainstorm about things that are old, white, decrepit. And the other room, they brainstormed about things that were young, green, verdant, supple. And then they switched rooms and did it again. But the actual experiment was measuring the speed at which they walked from room to room. And you can imagine that the people that were brainstorming about old stuff walked a lot slower than the ones that were brainstorming about. And again, that's an idea of the mind influencing the body. So it goes both ways. And that's called embodied cognition. And it works very much in the spine. In fact, I think a lot of people who have pain, and you need to, anyone who's got pain, you need to work on both the mind and the body. But sometimes, and our country doesn't do a very good job of the mind therapy that's necessary. But sometimes it's easiest because it's more available to tap into the body first and start to build a core, particularly the hidden core. And by building that hidden core, not only will you reduce pain, but you will change the mind in a reciprocal manner, an embodied cognition type of way.
It is because, the one thing about movement, as we see in nature, is what doesn't move, AKA what doesn't grow, dies. And as we see that mind body connection and welcoming it, especially because many of the colleagues years past would just say, no, we're not going to go there because we can't measure it. We can't do hypotheticals. We can't tell you what the mind is doing while the body's reacting. So therefore, we're not going to talk about what we don't know. They also didn't like the word innate because you can't measure innate. And innate intelligence is real. And if you don't understand it, you need to dive deeper into it. And that's some of the things that I've really enjoyed listening to our guests come on Adjusted Reality is they've opened their mind, but they've opened their heart. And it's that clarity of thought when you do both that really challenges the body. And so when you close off and say, you know what, Dr. Roth, you're a neurosurgeon, you should not be talking like this, then you can say, wait a minute, this is the full embodiment. Yes, I can do delicate, beautiful surgeries. And when you think of it like an art, it is an art. It's beautiful. Like think of the things that you've touched that no one in the world has ever even contemplated outside of the people that can do what you do. I mean, the delicate fibers in the tissue when you are working with a patient, it's a beautiful thing. And you said that in your book. When I can heal someone with surgery, it is really fulfilling. That I think is one of the pieces that really needed to come out right out of the gate, that you stepped into this with such an open heart and an open mind to say there's more to it than just the medical portion of this. And I want to talk to you now about the hidden core, because when your book was written, there was nothing out there at this level. And there wasn't people brave enough to say, just because you think it doesn't mean it's so. You pulled back and said, you know what? People think about not doing things and they don't do them. And in the process of that, I want to just touch on something that I think is really relevant, and that is placebo and nocebo. Can you walk our listeners through? Because I think you did such a nice job of putting that out there.
Well, I mean, I think most people have a general idea of what the placebo effect is, but what what they may get wrong about it is that some people think it's kind of like psychology mumbo jumbo. Oh, if you will yourself to do it, you can do it. But that's not what the placebo effect is at all. What the placebo effect is the brain's capacity to ignite endogenous mechanisms that are in the body. So, for example, the most obvious one and easiest one to talk about is pain. If you're given a sugar pill and told that it's going to help your pain, it's not just mind over matter, your pain gets better. What happens is the brain has many ways of igniting a pain stifling mechanism. One of them is to secrete endorphins and enkephalins, which are endogenous pain stiflers. Also, the brain has the capacity to, through descending control of the spinal cord, diminish pain in that way. So if you take a Percocet or a narcotic, all you're really doing when you take that pill is tapping into the endogenous body's pain stifling mechanism. The Percocet binds with a receptor that's there for a purpose. Normally, it would be bound by enkephalins, and now it's being bound by medication. In both cases, you're parasitizing off of an endogenous, naturalistic working system. It's just with a placebo, it's the mind that's triggering that parasitization of the system. The nocebo effect, which is sort of the evil stepsister, I find really interesting. That's the brain's capacity to increase pain. And I think that a lot of chronic pain is really just the nocebo effect. And we can get into things like fibromyalgia and other chronic pain syndromes, I believe, are manifestations of the nocebo effect.
I really picked up on it because it wasn't well documented in many books where we're talking about chronic pain, and you did it really eloquently. And I want to just give our listeners a reality that you had a fellow on the phone with you late at night. As a neurosurgeon, you know that people don't call unless they're absolutely critical. And he called and he said, if I had a gun, I would end it now. And you started talking with him. And the part that actually was so amazing is then you asked him, how's your pain now? And he responded, I don't have any pain. So there's a reflection on fear can be one piece of that. Fear of doing something more, fear of not doing anything, fear of getting off the floor, because fear is the unknown, false evidence that appears real. That's the fear people live with every day. But then you took us into a philosophy, which I loved. I want you to describe it. But it's like, once you understand and you recognize that there isn't knowledge to know until you know, share with us what that meant when you're philosophizing about where that person was, and then you talked with them, and then they said they had no pain.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Fear is such a big part of pain. And just, when people, one of the things I try to do with my patients is I guide them to, rather than panic, equanimity. And it's so much better emotion. Pain is, but first of all, just to give you some background, back pain is part of life. You can go to anywhere on the earth at any given time, and if you poll the population, 20% of people have significant back pain at any given time. 40% of people have had significant back pain in the last year, and 80% of people have had significant back pain sometime in their lives. So pain is part of life. But we look at back pain as something broken. And so one of the things, just understanding that, look, for example, when you get a cold, you don't think that you have COVID, or maybe you did in 2020, but
Right.
um, for the most part, you think I got a cold and it's going to go away in a few days, and you don't panic. You get a headache, you don't think I have a brain tumor. You think you have a headache and it's going to go in a few days. But we look at back pain differently, and this unknown, because it's metaphorically unknown. What's causing my back pain? We're not very good at answering that question. But for that reason, people look at back pain differently and assume the pain is related to something broken, and even more so that something broken has to be fixed before the pain goes away. But rather, if you can look at pain in a different way, as maybe the vicissitudes of life, something that flows like colds and headaches and other things that come and go, and eliminate the fear of something broken, for example, you can diminish the pain. And so
It's
there's no doubt that conversation is very powerful. Narratives are very powerful. But that's of course only one thing. If you followed the work of John Sarno, who was a pretty well-known physiatrist in New York, and I don't subscribe to everything that he said, but one of the things, he had two sort of basic tenets. One is that once you realize that most back pain is just a manifestation of some suppressed emotion, fear, anxiety. Once you realize that, it goes away on its own. And the second thing is, so just realize that and get back to life. Now, the second part is very valuable. Getting back to routine and doing and not being afraid to do is a very important part of overcoming back pain. But also, there was some truth in what he said. I don't know that he ever proved that it was really a suppressed emotion, but just the imagining what back pain is half the battle.
it's so true. And what's beautiful about you is coming into your office, I could tell right away I would feel comfortable because you're looking at me as a whole being. You're not looking at me as a back pain victim. And that to me is such a big shift away from, if I look at you as a problem or a symptom, my treatment is going to be focused on the problem and the symptom. And whole being care, that ability to see and be with the patient in a very broad spectrum, is like a canvas. You can't just paint a few things on a canvas and see a picture. You have to look at the picture. Sometimes you have to take different angles. Kind of a beautiful way when you look at a storm on an ocean is you can look and see the ocean. The clouds are black and it looks really, really dark. But there's times where if you're early in the morning and you turn around, the sun is rising. It's beautiful. It's bold, and it is energizing. So your perspective changes. And I think that's one of the things that has made you such a great healer, and bring the patient in and say, don't be afraid of what you don't know, because that's an obvious. And back pain is much like most things in life. It's going to come, it's going to wax, and it's going to wane, and we can do better. And there's a hidden piece that many people haven't talked about, except for you brought it up in such a beautiful way. It's called the hidden core. And I can't let my audience get away without learning about something that is absolutely fundamental. So much so that it's the core. When you think core, think of an apple. An apple doesn't stand on its own. It has a core flux. Now talk to our audience about what you learned about the hidden core.
Well, so for most people, the core is limited in their mind to the anterior core. Most people, in fact, most people design their exercise programs when they look in the mirror and they say, what do I want to make look better? But it's the stuff that you don't see when you look in the mirror that really counts, I think, especially for back pain. But so the hidden core is, again, it's hidden to your view, but it's also hidden metaphorically because you don't think of it. And it's where I think where the real opportunity lies. And, it's really interesting the way I came about sort of recognizing this was that I had when I was growing up, and I do mention this in the book, but I was had back pain as part of my life. I originally heard it playing football, but it became a really prominent part of my life later on in high school. I played high school and college sports, and I had this Roman chair in my basement, which I would just because my father had put it down there as part of a workout room. I would go down there and I would use the Roman chair, and I recognized by trial and error that it helped my back. Then later on in life, I got interested in kettlebells and started to recognize the same thing. And then I came across a physical therapist from Florida who had written a book called The Multifidus Back Pain Solution, which was a really short, simple, honest book. And I realized this was just not mainstream thought for most people. And so I started to do it myself because of my own back issues. And then I started subjecting my patients to it. And the people who bought into it and did it benefited. There was no doubt in my mind. And that's really prompted me to start reading the book. But the idea, I have sort of three tenets toward the hidden core. One is that you should, three tenets. One is that you should emphasize posterior over anterior because most of us spend a lot of time sitting in our jobs, in our life. And when you sit, you tend to stretch and weaken the posterior core muscles and shorten and tighten the anterior core muscles. So you want to overcompensate for that by shortening and strengthening the posterior core muscles. That's number one. Number two, the posterior core is best strengthened in terms of endurance training as opposed to pure strength. It's like running versus doing squats for your legs. You really want to create, these are slow twitch muscles that respond better to endurance training. So you want to do high reps of low weight, essentially. And then the third thing is, and this is something that's a lot of physical therapy promotes both stretching and strengthening, but I believe that you should strengthen before you stretch. And that's against what a lot of physical therapists believe, which you start off stretching is the key to back pain. It is, but you have to strengthen before you can stretch. So those are sort of three tenets, the posterior core, and most people don't know how to strengthen their posterior core.
You're absolutely right. Don't you think it's phenomenal that your dad brings down this Roman chair?
Yes.
Yeah, and changing your life. Like
Exactly.
randomly, it's like he put the tools in front of you to figure out for yourself. Like, son, you're gonna get it. Like you will follow. You don't know this, but I'm a genius and you'll follow. You'll figure it out. As the older you get, the more you're gonna think I'm smart, which is such a beautiful thing. It's true though. I had a dance producer on adjusted reality, and she did note that she had to be very careful with her stretching because she could see that overstretching caused her to have back pain. And she said she has to be realistic by both strengthening and stretching. And dancers, I mean, they're hyper flexible, right? They can do splits beyond splits. And having a best friend that was a dancer and watching yeah, I'm in awe. Like I wish I could do what you do, but I think it would take me 2 years to get to that level of flexibility. And yet, when you contemplate that hidden core, especially for those that sit, you're right. That back muscles, the muscles that we don't actually see, are the ones that we really need to work on. And there are several in there. There's actually 8 that you focused on for the listeners right now. The book is called Patrick Roth, MD, The End of Back Pain. And I will tell you, when you see the exercises, you will say to yourself, yep, I get it. I don't know why I don't do it, and I need to do it today. That's your adjusted reality. Don't say you're going to do it. do it because it will change your life. And I want to ask you this because you did write in the book, there was kind of an interesting overplay of there. You said you had chiropractic in your life, which is wonderful. And I think everybody, a patient has an opportunity to find what they need when they need it. And then you tested your chiropractor out, which I thought was pretty funny. Um, let's see if they can find the problem as I think you had said it. Tell me the story because I think it's important when you come from a very scientific background and then you come into the world of chiropractic. My sister does the same thing to me. I'm not going to tell you what the problem is. You find it. So is that how you kind of approach the chiropractic world?
Yeah, I mean, I can't. This chiropractor happened to be a good friend of mine, but he, I suspected already. In fact, I knew already that his hands were like another pair of eyes for him. And so I just said he asked me where I hurt, and I said, "You tell me." And it took him
I love
about
that.
2 seconds to get there. And it just shows you, you can develop your hands in an incredible way. The feedback that your hands give you. Again, it's a form of mastery. That's and again, the form of mastery that ultimately leads to passion.
It does. And when you look back over time and you put together that list of exercises that I think are critical, I really do. I think when looking over them and thinking about the 30 years in practice that I've been with patients, the one thing that I can say with certainty is the people that do nothing get exactly that. They get nothing back. And the people that do try and they start to reflect on what's working, what's not working. Because so many of us come into a doctor's office and it's fix me. And I think we need to change that reality is adjust it to I want to fix myself. Can you walk with me on this journey? That's a really different way to approach things.
It's like that expression, right? Give someone a fish, feed them for a meal, teach them to fish, feed them for life.
Feed them
And
for life.
yeah, and I think you're 100% right. So much of success in my field is getting the patient to take responsibility for their own um, home-based therapy program, and because autonomy is very, very important. I couldn't agree with you more.
Walk me through a patient that you know you want to encourage them not to have surgery because you know you've seen it, you've seen the outcomes, and now you want to encourage them first. And it's kind of the Hippocratic oath above all else, do no harm. It's the patient's reality too. Above all else, if it hurts to do it, what do I do, doc? and
Yeah,
and patients will question that.
yeah, no doubt. Especially if they have a mindset that something inside of them is broken. But I think, and again, one of my favorite quotes is Michelangelo. I don't know if I have that in the book or not, but I'll paraphrase it. Hopefully, I won't butcher it too badly. But the greatest danger is not in setting your mark too high and failing to achieve it, but setting it too low and making your mark. And
Yes.
so people have to understand that when you are trying to rehab your back or strengthen your back, if you don't push hard enough to potentially put yourself at risk for an exacerbation, then you're also denying yourself the opportunity to improve. So, there's you have to be smart and you have to be deliberate and you have to be slow and methodical, but you do have to make progress. And that occasionally comes with setbacks. And so I make that very clear to patients. You may get set back a few times, but ultimately you'll overcome that barrier and you will start to you'll start to see the benefits of it. And I couldn't agree with you more about the motion and the need to move and to do. Um, you know, early in my career, I was obsessed with two things. One was to decipher the pain generator in the back and we use all sorts of stuff, MRIs, CAT scans. We use dynamic films, and we use something called SPECT, which is a really crazy new technology that looks at inflammation inside of joints. But so my goal was to figure out where it's coming from using all that technology and all the history and physical, and then to find some minimally invasive way of eradicating that pain generator. But as I matured as a surgeon, I realized that there's so much more to treating and healing. Much of the patient can do it for themselves, and And so that transition has made me a much better doctor. One of the things that really helped me was this is how you started off the talk, I think, this difference between health and healthcare. And I teach a class at the medical school called Human Dimension. And what it is, it looks at health. If you think about, if you ask people what they want, they don't want healthcare, they want health. People want to feel better, be better. And the class that we teach really looks at healthcare as maybe accounting for 15% of health. The other 85% of health, or what we call the social determinants of health, your education, and a lot of that, you can control through your own autonomous exercise program. So enlisting the patient, making the patient feel confident that they can overcome whatever it is that's hurting, is an enormous part of, it's called self-efficacy by the psychologists. That is an enormous part of healthcare. That's a social determinant of health. That's got nothing to do with healthcare. And so as I broaden my perspective on treating patients, I realized how important it is to look at them holistically and enlist them in the process also. Yeah, I can do an operation on a small percentage of patients and successfully eradicate their pain. But even if I took a knife and stabbed you in the thigh with the solution to your problem is more than pulling a knife out of your thigh. There's a whole other part that you have to deal with as well.
That's actually really deep. If you think about what you just said, is that knife cuts deep. Obviously, it's going to cut through a lot of tissue and a lot of very important pieces. But when you heal, it kind of reflects back to that trauma is still with you. Like, why did he do that? And how did my healing, although I'm still here and I just have the scar is more in the mind than it is in the body. And that really is one of those moments where we reflect. And you said something really, really important that I didn't want to get lost. And you said it as to the patient's progress. Progress is a very important word. Setbacks are set up for comebacks. If you can't set yourself up to push through some of the barriers with a physician as a journey, and that's why your book is so beautiful, because you're talking about this as we're on the journey together. And I'm going to set you up with what I know, and you're going to set yourself up for what you feel. And if you can't get to a point where you're not willing to or able to, that's an inflection point. And one of the things that you wrote in the book, although your example of stabbing me in the thigh is probably going to stick with me more now, but it's the soldiers who were in war, where their brain didn't do something. What didn't their brain do? Their brain didn't judge. They could lose a limb and they were still going to safety because their brain said, that's the problem. We're moving on. We can't do the intensity, the frequency, and that judgmental thing that the brain does to assess, because we're in life or death situation. And I think what you've done really well in the journey is talk about the brain as it relates to the body, and then be able to say, body, you need to relate to the brain. And this is a cohesive opportunity. And with you teaching these medical students that are coming out about what those socioeconomic and opportunities are that may look like it's a setback. Like, okay, I come from a poor family and my nutrition is really poor. Therefore, my inflammation is really high. I'm never going to get out of that. You change that. You say, wait a minute, you have control. And sometimes in control means you need a little hand along the way. And I think that's a critical component to being a healer versus just being in science. And you have fantastic technology, which you just shared with us, which I think is quite brilliant. But then you ended the book with something really, really profound. And this was some time ago. And the profound part, and I would, if you would kindly, is expand on this, because you gave it the gist. The future of medicine will put you in the driver's seat of back pain diagnostics, management, and treatment. Technology as well, changing definition of word expert, will enable you to identify and access your back pain soulmate on the internet. You know more now than ever. And this book is a few years old. Tell me what it now that you've seen the technology, does that still hold true for you? And if not, why?
Well, yeah, I still believe that, everything is being democratized. So it used to be that a doctor would send you for labs and films, and then bring you in the office to give you the results. Of course, now you don't need to go to the doctor's office to get results. They're yours. You own them. You can get them off the internet. And even the analogy I think I used there, but the analogy that really hits home is compare Encyclopedia Britannica to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not only hundreds of times bigger, but it's more accurate because instead of being compiled by single experts, it's a democratized expertise where many different experts can chime in, and it's a live document that keeps changing. And I think that's what medicine is going to be, and those live and the patient's going to be part of that. So remember, the patient is the expert in their own body. We may be an expert in the science and technology, but they're an expert in their own body. And when you combine the expertise of the patient to many different providers, not, and by the way, the team approach to medicine is so much better. You get doctors, nurses, social workers, various different types of doctors, and the patient, and they all are interdependent on each other. No more of this, the paternalistic doctor who knows best,
Right.
and no more totally independent patient who does it all themselves. There's an interdependent relationship between the two and other providers, and the internet, of course, facilitates that, and that makes healthcare and health much better.
Well said. It brings us now to the new world of artificial intelligence. What can we tell it? And I really do want to see artificial intelligence keep us in our own patient-centered focus, that I know me, and that artificial intelligence can work with and collaborate with some of the important aspects to get you to the next level and actually bring down the fear level, because fear, as we noted, can change the way you look at things. So the things you look at change. I have pain, therefore I won't do X, Y, and Z. I have pain, therefore I'm going to stop my job and do something different because I can't do it anymore. And I think we need to open up the conversations and also the collaboration, which is such a brilliant thing because neurosurgeons in the day didn't have a lot of relationships with chiropractors. And now it's just, let's come together and let's talk about what we're good at and how we can work together so that the patient gets a treatment protocol that is right and good for them. And I think you've come such a broad stroke using, thank goodness you didn't take the philosophy out of your book, because it brought me back in, and you were right. You went with your gut. That gut instinct has never led me wrong. I think you recognize it because it comes into patient treatment too. And artificial intelligence will never have a gut instinct. And we can recognize that a patient experience often comes from higher level thinking that can never be specifically put into an artificial intelligence mode. We'll see how that pans out. But I want to ask you this as we wrap up, and I know I'm going to have you back because I had so much fun and I know there's so much more. But listen, there's a question that for me always resonates because my audience, adjusted reality, always gets adjusted by what the last question is. And I think as we go through, there's rewarding things and gifts in life that we get. Sometimes we don't recognize them as gifts until many, many years down the road, like a Roman chair is a gift. It was a very, very important gift. The greatest life lesson you learned as a neurosurgeon, and it can be science-based, it could be philosophically based. You take that question. Tell us what was one of your greatest life lessons.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is very early in my career, I was doing a very difficult brain tumor with one of my partners. And that partner had been my resident. Now he was my partner, but he was older than me because he had to train twice. He trained in England first, and then he trained in the United States under me the second time. And I was maybe a year into practice. We went to see the patient's family after the case, and he wanted me to come because it was a VIP patient of some type. And we go in there to the family, and he flops down on the chair, and the family says to him, "How'd it go?" He goes, "God, it was hard. I really struggled. I had trouble getting planes. It was a very bloody tumor, but I finally got around it, and I'm happy with the ultimate result." And I remember just thinking to myself, wow, that was really candid and direct. And of course, as you would expect, the family was very appreciative and they loved the transparency and honesty of it. And it occurred to me at that moment that this time after an operation with the family should be an unbelievably treasured moment, because it is your story to tell. And guess what? Nobody's looking at you. So it's your story to tell, and the responsibility is to simply tell the truth, because patients love truth and transparency. And I remember thinking to myself at that moment, this is going to be an opportunity I'll never ever not take advantage of, to tell them exactly what happened, the truth, transparently, and not worry. Because remember, you can embellish, you can lie if you feel vulnerable, medical, legally, whatever it is. Those are all things you can do. But to me, character is what you do when no one's watching. And this is a perfect example of that narrative with the patient's family after an operation.
That's a fantastic and a most appreciated reality for so much of life is we all want to hear the truth. Sometimes it's difficult to hear the truth, but the authenticity and the rawness that sometimes comes out of the people's mouths changes your lives forever. I think some of the things you've said today will change the lives of our audience. And I can't thank you enough, because you came with an open heart, an open mind. You wrote the books, you continue to teach, and you give grace to the people who changed your world, to your dad, to the other neurosurgeon who you learned from, that had to do it twice. And those moments cannot be taken away. Those are reflection moments that make us the character, just like you said. It's what we do when no one's watching. And that is the best of the best, when they can see that I'm doing this for the right reason at the right time, and I'm going to make it right. And that is a blessing. So thank you. You are a true blessing that we've had today, Dr. Roth. I hope to have you back. And I know that there are 4 books, as you had said to me early on. So it's going to be hard to not have you come back a few more times to get the best of the best from you. So thank you again for joining us on Adjusted Reality today.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to our next meeting.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to Adjusted Reality as we spoke to Dr. Patrick Roth about promoting health rather than just treating the disease. And his book, The End of Back Pain, opened a lot of conversation around pain, the brain, activities, and where you need to be and who you need to be with when you decide you're going to conquer something. And I think his quotes in the book and also the philosophy that he put in the book are going to be helpful for anybody out there. Even if you're not suffering from back pain, which we hope you are not, but if you are, remember it's fluid. Life changes, just like the weather. It's going to come, the ebbs, and it's going to flow. So remember, this too shall pass. And many of the things that we suffer today will be things of the past tomorrow, but we have to act on them. And that's why Adjusted Reality is such a podcast for you to say, I'm going to be better tomorrow, and I'm going to start today. Well, as you know, we want to thank you for joining us. As you know, the podcast was brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, and influencers. And we know life moves pretty fast, so we want you to never miss an episode. So I want you to go now to f4cp.org/adjusted reality. You can subscribe to our new newsletter. And the best part is you're going to be able to sign up for the Adjusted Reality book, which will be fun and entertaining. If you're interested in hearing from a specific guest, give us a note. Let us know what guest you're recommending. That's how we got Dr. Roth. What a blessing. Now, don't forget to subscribe. You need to share this podcast with friends and family, rate and review. We are so grateful to you when you do that. And if you're feeling so inspired to learn more about chiropractic or to find a doctor of chiropractic near you, you can go to f4cp.org/find a doctor. We appreciate your support, and as always, look forward to checking in with you again soon.